Step right up, folks. The game is LibGuide Shuffle, all cards wild. Have a seat and let's play. My name is Colin Eade, librarian for the Canton campus of Chattahoochee Technical College. In this presentation, we're going to see how a simple card sort sparked a revolution of our entire online presence and instruction methods. Chattahoochee Technical College's library services, as many libraries do, makes extensive use of the SpringShare suite of online content creation tools like LibGuides. Our LibGuides are the primary way we provide asynchronous online library instruction to students in traditional classes as well as our online-only courses. CTC students are in the typical college age range, approximately 18 to 21 years old with some outliers. CTC enrolls about 14,000 students who are 50% female, 23% Black, 15% Hispanic and Latino, and 3.5% Asian. As part of our mandate to make available the same level of service to our distance and online students, we made plans to assess if our LibGuides were meeting the needs of those students. The philosophy of our guides had been to arrange the content pages in a similar way to how we arranged our libraries. That is, going like with like and each section distinct. Each guide had a landing page with general information boxes about the research process, pictures related to the subject, and contact information for the librarian who curated the guide. Guides, also up to this point, had been organized by resource type, so books, articles and databases, internet sources, etc., each with its own dedicated content page. The collection of guides was categorized alphabetically or by subject area. Usage numbers were consistent and usually peaked in the later weeks of a semester when major assignments were due. For this study, we chose our English 1101 guide, which is intended for CTC students who are enrolled in English 1101 Composition and Rhetoric, which is the introductory writing and research class for freshmen. We decided on this because most students at CTC will complete the English 1101 course since it is required for all associate degrees. Our goal was to determine student preference for how information in the guides is presented. There had been concern on our part for a while prior to this that the information in the guides was not being utilized. We needed to determine if this was due to layout, format, or something else we couldn't see at the time. We needed the end user, the students, to tell us how best to serve their research needs. We expected to find, based on usability studies from other institutions, that students would prefer to have guides that are oriented toward assignments rather than types of information. Two of our staff had attended a conference wherein a presentation on card sorting was given. Given the success of that study, we determined that a card sort study would suit our assessment needs best as well. We contacted the Chattahoochee Tech Foundation to provide a small grant for gift incentives to participate in the study. They provided funds for a $5 gift card to each participant. The library director added a can of soda and a candy bar to each gift. 3 library staff would act as the researchers for the study, each from a different campus. These locations included our 2 largest and most populous locations, and the third was one that is smaller and has a large dual enrollment population. A group of 5 students each from the 3 campuses were selected to assess the card elements of our English 1101 guide. The participants needed to have already taken or be currently enrolled in the English 1101 course in order to be eligible. We created a study consent form explaining the details of the test to students with the help of the Office of Institutional Effectiveness. The guide was examined and then codified into the cards for the study. A script was prepared with interview questions and explanation of the test in order to create consistency. We then contacted instructors with whom we had a good relationship and asked them to call for volunteers from their classes. Some of the instructors even offered extra credit to the students who would participate. All told, the preparation time for all this took about 1 month. To build the deck, there were 32 cards in total to capture all of the used elements of the English 1101 guide. The cards were each cataloged by on what page of the guide they were, which box number or location on the page, and finally, the item's number place within the box in which they were held. Cards had brief clarifications on them if there was a term with technical or unclear definitions. For the purposes of the study, we did not create cards for any of the pictures or assets that weren't there to serve an information purpose. Each student was filmed with iPads held by a library staff member. The students were encouraged to speak their thoughts as they went through the sort. The cards were then shuffled and given to the student. The study was briefly explained by the library staff from a script, and then the student would begin to sort. During the sort, library staff would only answer questions to clarify what a card represented. Students were allowed to add or discard any of the cards they felt necessary. After the sorting was finished, a picture was taken of the sorted cards exactly as the students made them. Then another photo was taken, if necessary, of the cards arranged to be more legible, but still in groupings and orders that the student had created. The library staff would then ask the student a short series of questions about their reasoning and opinions of the study and the content that they saw on the cards. We did not have many cards added by students, and those that were did not add any significant insight. We did have some students discard cards and comment on why. Usually it was for reasons of redundancy or simply not needed. This shed light on us having resources in places that were not in support of the subject or assignments in that course. For example, we had a mapped box that appeared on all guides and contained information on all writing styles. So the English guide had information about APA, and this might be confusing for the user. After only a couple of participants, patterns emerged. Almost universally, research resources were floating to the top. The following is a clip from one of the videos in which a student at our North Metro campus is very animated about the sort and how it makes more sense to her. After that will be a brief look at some of the results photos from the sorting.
Okay, so the way I think makes the most logical sense is to do like research and maybe like even like pull these out even a little more, because some of these are like databases and some of them are specifically like news, because this would be like if I was looking for a primary source.
Mm-hmm.
So like specifying that like this is news, like it would be like this is news and this is, but I like these kind of like these finding books, finding things, because it would be cool, like how Galileo has that search bar.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you could do that within to find a reference that would be best for you. Does that make sense? Like,
You mean like? No, try and explain it to me again. I was trying to regurgitate it and I can't.
Like,
Okay.
if you're in your research tab, right, in the research tab that I'm looking at, the finding books, like if you had like, oh, find books, and that way you could just go into the research tab and look something up and find what you need right there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not like shuffling through a million databases. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
We entered all the data into a spreadsheet with different columns for each campus and student. The groupings and terms created by the students were used to compile a list of categories and then ascribed each card into one of the student-supplied headings. Certain trends toward research materials were immediately apparent. Our final data set was 14 students and one outlier. A majority of the students grouped the cards in very similar and logical categories, research and databases together, news sources together, etc. We observed not only what categories they created and what went into them, but also how the students prioritized those categories. The majority of students grouped the most immediately useful resources into the highest priority for the guide. Research materials were first and foremost. This was in line with our expectation that students wanted the guides to be oriented towards assignments rather than general resources. There seemed to be a need for an economy of clicks, that is, clicking on the link to a guide and going straight into research materials and assignment help was going to be far more helpful than generic information about how to research on a landing page. Students and faculty were eager to help, and there was a general air of excitement from them. We found also that it costs very, very little to perform this kind of study in terms of both money and time. It was far easier and more manageable than we had estimated. The results were a revelation about how our students wanted to access our services. This eventually led to dramatic changes to our entire library instruction pedagogy. There was a substantial consolidation of guides. Previously, we'd had guides for individual courses that used the same, or near enough to, resources. Courses like US and World History, which had been 2 guides, now would be 1 guide with our history databases. The same went for macro and microeconomics and the human anatomy classes, among others. We began reorganizing guides into more logical and user-friendly categories. These were course guides for individual courses, program guides for an entire degree or certificate, for example, cosmetology and paramedicine, and special topics like writing style guides. Usage numbers increased, and we got very positive feedback from faculty and students alike. Our library's entire instruction mechanism underwent a tremendous overhaul as a direct result from this assessment. Our students showed us that we needed to present our information in a way that supported their assignments and coursework directly, leading to an entirely new format for our LibGuides. The domino effect included new standards and framework for instruction and a more structured way of interacting with students in our digital platform consistently. Thank you very much for your time. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions about this study or about our process and resulting actions. There will be a link in the description to a LibGuide containing many of the resources we created and used.